Before we get into this video, I just want to thank everybody who prayed for me during my hour of need. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me to know that so many people out there care about me and my fate. So thank you and God bless you all. For those of you who aren't aware, on Sunday I came down with acute appendicitis and I had my appendix removed Monday morning. And I've just been kind of slowly recovering since then. It's been a very difficult couple of days. I'm not quite there yet. I'm probably about 75% of the way there, but I'm in much better shape than I was on Monday or Tuesday. Just while we're doing this preface, I just also like to thank my mother for being there and helping to kind of nurse me back to health when I'm not really capable of doing many things for myself. I have great parents and I love them very much. So because this is my channel, I'm gonna go through what happened to me personally, but also where it fits in the broader societal, political, and economic context. As it was kind of a very timely occasion to get appendicitis. So, for those of you who aren't that familiar, Canada has a single payer healthcare system. Unlike a lot of countries with a public healthcare system, there's basically no private healthcare in Canada. It's pretty much 100% government run and 100% government managed. Now, that means there's always shortfalls, there's always rationing, delays, and that sort of thing. But it also means, on the other hand, that if you get sick or you get in an accident, like your arm gets chopped off and it has to get reattached, you're not going to be in medical debt for the rest of your natural life. So it's kind of a trade off one way or another. Canadians are very proud of their medical system. I think probably excessively so. But if you look at some of the stuff that happens in the United States and some other countries with less of a system, I can kind of see why Canadians have that impression. As I said, though, the biggest problem with the Canadian healthcare system, and this is widely acknowledged, is how long wait times are. And this isn't just for like cosmetic surgery when you have severe burn scars and you want those removed, or you want, I don't know, warts removed or benign tumors removed. But this includes stuff like hip replacements, preventative surgeries, other quality of life things. I don't have an exact list, but it includes a lot of stuff. I know my father had to wait for a hip replacement for, I think it was over 5 years, and he wound up retiring just because he couldn't work because he couldn't really walk anymore. And he wound up getting the hip replacement like the year after he retired. He probably would have worked another 5 years and saved the government a bunch of money, but they just couldn't get him a hip replacement in time. And this is very common, and there's a lot of stories of Canadians dying because of the endless wait lists and because they can't really get treatment. And this is also true for emergency rooms. The average wait time in emergency rooms, I think, is between 6 and 8 hours. And this is even for very severe conditions, like heart attacks, basically anything other than if you're going to bleed out in the next 5 minutes. You can expect to wait 5 to 8 hours. It's not uncommon for people to die or their conditions to get much worse while they're just kind of sitting there in a chair, having basically no attention paid to them. So, this is the state of the healthcare system before the pandemic. So, what happens during the pandemic is the government gets everyone all riled up. It's the Black Death times 1,000. Everyone's going to die from it. We have to prioritize COVID over everything. People who get COVID have to go to the hospital. They have to get hospital beds, that kind of thing. So hospitals are immediately flooded with COVID, and it takes up a lot of the capacity. I don't know if it's a majority of the capacity, but all the capacity that would be used on stuff like hip replacements or cancer treatment or stuff like that is basically pushed back, and the sole priority is more or less made COVID. So all this other stuff is on the back burner. And despite what like some of the people will tell you, it's not as if more people don't develop hip problems just because COVID's happening. Because people are still developing hip problems, they're still developing health problems. You just added like 2 years of these surgeries into the backlog, and it's getting worse every day. Now, an additional problem with this is who are the people who are most likely to get COVID? Well, the people who are around people with COVID, which is healthcare workers. Now, this was especially bad back when COVID was bad, and they would actually become very sick. And so you have this constant issue of capacity has diminished because you have fewer healthcare workers. Demand has massively increased. And basically, the more people who get COVID, the more healthcare workers who get COVID, the less capacity there is. And this whole thing has just kind of been snowballing and snowballing. And Omicron is kind of where the shit hits the fan because everybody has COVID. It's hyper contagious now. And so you have a large portion of the medical community who's kind of stuck at home, unable to work. And a lot of these people are asymptomatic and not contagious. So in a lot of cases, the logic is it's better to let someone die on the operating table from terminal leukemia than it is to have an asymptomatic surgeon working on them. I guess is kind of the logic that we're operating out of at the moment. You also have the issue of the mass vaccine programs, in which case you've had to divert a lot of medical staff to go do those. In a lot of cases, that's off-duty people have to volunteer. So it's been 2 years now of medical staff who have having to be pulled double, triple shifts, who can't get their normal work done, who have just been trying to deal with COVID, and there's no end in sight, and things just seem to keep getting worse. And I'm sure a lot of them are on the verge of just total breakdowns. They need a break of some description, but even if COVID was to end tomorrow, the system's completely fucked because of the amount of backlog there is. And so this is the situation we find ourselves in. Someone I know had a heart attack and they had to sit and emerge for 48 hours before they got seen. A family member has acute cancer. Their surgery got canceled because the anesthesiologist got COVID. When I had appendicitis, every clinic in the area where I live was closed. I had to get like a tele appointment. I guess we'll go into that in a minute. But it's completely broken down. And it's just going to get exponentially worse as time goes on. And I don't know if there's really an answer to this. All I'm going to say is the government and the powers that be have had 2 years to come up with something. Like it's not as if we didn't see this coming. This has been the issue for 2 years now. And people will say, well, Argent takes a long time to train new medical staff. I get that, but we're 2 years in. Is it going to be like 3, 4, 5, 6 years in? It's going to be the same issue and it's not going to be addressed. So, like, I don't know. You just, at some point, you have to have done something. You have to have some sort of plan. And it just really doesn't look like it's there. So, getting into my story. So, Saturday night, I didn't sleep at all. I had the most horrendous gas and indigestion I've ever had in my life. I was just kind of writhing in pain the whole night, unable to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I had kind of a mild to moderate pain in my lower right abdomen. And I was just thinking to myself, isn't that where your appendix is? And so I looked it up and I didn't really have any of the symptoms other than the pain. But I was just like, my understanding of appendicitis is it can burst and you can die really quick from it. If you can get surgery quickly, it's not that bad, but it can get fatal really fast. So there was no clinics open. So it was a holiday weekend and people don't need medical care on holiday weekends. So they were all closed. I was able to find one and I got a tele appointment around 3 p.m. And they're like, yeah, it sounds like appendicitis. You should probably go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room. I went into triage. They lost my blood work the first time, which was nice. So I sat there for 2 hours. After they took my blood work, they lost it. They did it again. I went in for imaging and they were like, yeah, you have appendicitis. We'll send someone over to give you antibiotics. We should probably start you on that. Also, I was severely dehydrated because I'd been there in this like hot building for about 5 hours at that point, and they told me I couldn't drink any water because I could be having surgery at any time. So it took them probably about 6 or 7 hours to actually get me an IV and start giving me antibiotics and water going through, although it was not nearly enough water to really hydrate myself in any meaningful sense. But so yeah, it took about 7 hours or so. My understanding is you're generally supposed to receive treatment within that amount of time, like a surgery. So I personally think it got worse. Um, like that it wasn't that bad, but the amount of time it took for them to even give me antibiotics made the situation worse. And I only got the actual surgery the next day around, I think it was 11 or 12. So it took them roughly 20 hours from me arriving there to getting surgery, which seems like quite a long time for appendicitis. But I mean, the guy who had the heart attack was 48 hours, so I guess it's not that bad. So I got the surgery for appendicitis. I hadn't slept the previous night. The bed was just extremely uncomfortable. Uh, I was just kind of in pain from my side. They gave me probably like 7 or 8 doses of antibiotics. I just found that they made me like really feverish, and it was very unpleasant. So all that stuff happened. The next morning, they finally took me in for surgery. Fortunately, I got general anesthesia, so I can't really remember it. But I woke up and I have 3 holes in my gut. They put iodine over it to disinfect it. The iodine is red, so it looks like blood. So I just thought my entire like midriff was coated in blood. But they're like, no, it's just iodine. So they brought me back up to my previous room, and I laid there for about an hour. And then they're like, look, we're out of beds. You're going to have to go somewhere else. So I got kicked out of the recovery room. And I got to say, that was one of the most painful experiences of my life. See, the issue with the appendix surgery is the surgery is it's 3 incisions. I think one's on your belly button, one's your lower right abdomen above your pelvis, and there's another one I think on your lower left side. I'm just looking at the scars now. So that's basically like a line along the center of your stomach. And if you've ever had the stomach flu or been punched there really hard, it's one of the more sensitive areas of your body. And basically, any movement you make relies very heavily on those muscles. Like you can do movements that don't really require your arms or don't really require your legs or your shoulders or something. But literally everything you do, from adjusting yourself in bed to standing up to using the washroom, requires those muscles. I also don't think they were giving me enough morphine. It really didn't do very much, in my opinion. So they took me to a I don't know, I think it's an overflow room. So you have about 20 people in, I don't know if you want to call them little cubbies fenced off with curtains or something like that. And they just kind of leave you there. Uh, I had to pee in a jug for the next day or two, which was unpleasant. But when they designed it, there wasn't a bathroom that was close to the recovery room, so you couldn't really go there. The one nice thing about the surgery being done is I was able to have water again. And so I was drinking a lot of water just because I was so dehydrated by that point in time. And so they just kept giving me like antibiotics. I'd sometimes get a little morphine, which didn't really seem to do anything, but it was just an utterly miserable state. And so I was trying to sleep while that was happening, but unfortunately in the ward there was a schizophrenic Karen, and she just complained the whole night. Basically from the moment I got there till she left the next day around noon. She just complained. She said they were violating her rights. She said they were mistreating her. She said that they were mean, that she demanded better treatment. She didn't obey the nurse's orders. She kept trying to get up and walk around. She asked to use the washroom like every 5 minutes and then threw a fit. And then she also did this kind of like gaslighting stuff where she would pretend, take a pity me, like, oh, I'm such a bad person. I'm the worst patient you've ever had. And she would do this all really loud. So that went on. She would literally do that for like 12 hours or something. And I'm shocked the nurses didn't just inject her with something to knock her out. But I couldn't sleep because of that. I got some food, which was nice. It was the first food I'd had in I think 2 days at that point. So I stayed in that room, like just lying there half dead for most of that. And then I got told I could go home, and I'm just like, oh fuck, I'm probably not well enough to go home, but anything to get out of this shithole. With the constant, like, because alarms went off, the PA system goes off, it's super bright. There's the Karens complaining every 5 seconds. It's really not a pleasant place. So they, I don't think, really listened to me when I said that I was in so much pain I couldn't walk. So like, oh, he can just walk out. You know, he doesn't need a wheelchair. He doesn't need anything like that. And I'm like, no, I think I'm gonna need a wheelchair. And they're like, no, you're fine. So I like get up and I take a step and I almost collapse. My mother's like, no, I think he needs a wheelchair. So so I get the wheelchair, she takes me out to the car, I get in the car. It's extremely painful. I get home, and then for the next couple of days, I'm either sitting on the couch, sleeping there, or sleeping in my bed. The thing with sleeping in your bed is lying on your back actually, at least with this, puts a lot of pressure on your stomach. So I could lie there for probably more than 5 or 6 hours without it getting really sore. And you can't sleep on your side because your side has a big hole in it. So you're just kind of left there, and that's extremely uncomfortable. And then I have to move to the couch, and then sitting up is a lot better because it doesn't place as much strain on your stomach. So I just kind of sat on the couch for a couple days. I didn't even really watch much TV. I was just kind of asleep most of the time. Every time I would kind of almost start getting better, the antibiotics would kick in and cause a fever and just make me feel really bad. One of the worst aspects of it is for the first day or two, it's really hard to use the washroom because the same muscles you use for that are also the ones that get fucked up. Well, I mean, your appendix is part of your large intestine. So, yeah, so that's really unpleasant. Um, and there is no actual dietary restrictions after getting your appendix out. You can eat whatever you want. I just decided to play it safe and eat like chicken, peas, rice. Like the sandwich would just be a piece of cheese and some turkey on bread. You know, stuff like that. Gatorade, Jello, which seemed to work pretty well. But so yeah, I came home Tuesday. It's Friday now. The last 3 days have just been me lying around, wanting to die, with every movement just being painful. Maybe I'm being a drama queen. I know there's lots of people who've been through worse things like leukemia or stuff like that, but gut pain is really tricky. You can't really cough, you can't really yawn. Even speaking for this long is starting to hurt quite a bit. One of the wounds in the middle of my stomach. So, like I said, I'm probably about 75% better now. The one silver lining to COVID is the office is closed, so I can work from home for the next couple weeks, which is nice because I really don't want to start commuting again until this thing is really fixed. Because I haven't passed out or anything yet, but I really don't want to reopen it or make the situation worse. But I mean, it's apparently gotten a lot worse even in the last couple days since I had my surgery. And it's probably going to keep getting worse. And there's not really seems to be anything that can be done about it. And so I guess I should be lucky. Feel very lucky that I got any treatment at all. Because who knows how many people are going to die from burst appendixes just because they can't treat them at all in time. I mean, it's nuts. So that's the situation. I hope you found my story kind of interesting, the overview kind of interesting, the broader context. God bless everyone. Thank you for your prayers. Talk to you later.